Welcome to Cannon Cocker Talk. This is Mike Marletto, Colonel USMC retired, here with Casey Harsh, Mark Fackler, and we're going to talk about the what we would call the road to war for 11th Marines. The events that took place from September of 2001 with the terrorist attacks on the United States, and then culminated with the 11th Marines getting its deployment order on the 31st of December 2002 for Operation Iraqi Freedom 1. So what we're trying to do is, get below the 10,000 foot level, talk about personal reflections, what people experienced, what they were thinking as we approached, the potential for deploying in the global war on terrorism. So let's start with introducing folks. I'm Colonel Mike Marletto. I grew up in San Leandro, California, was commissioned in the Marine Corps in 1977. Served in the 11th Marines Regiment, was fortunate enough to serve there at every rank that I held within the Marine Corps, from second lieutenant to colonel. And I joined the regiment. I was kind of a latecomer to the regiment after 9/11. I joined the regiment, took command from Colonel Ben Saylor in June of 2002. Currently living down under in Townsville, Australia. And Casey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Casey Harsh. I retired from the Marine Corps as well in 2013. From Reno, Nevada. I went to college at the University of Colorado, and my roommate was a Marine option. I think that was probably the biggest influence. And that's kind of my path to going in the Marine Corps. Yeah, it kind of sparked that interest. So I enlisted in '95. I was a cannoneer in Alpha Battery 1st Battalion, 12th Marines in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. And then in '97, I applied for officer candidate school, went out to Quantico, and then TBS, subsequently became an artillery officer and was assigned to 11th Marines. I started out and like Colonel Marletto. Well, I didn't make it to colonel. Obviously, the Marine Corps didn't recognize my talents, but I did serve all my officer ranks in 11th Marines from second lieutenant to major. That's where I peaked. And
Casey, when did you join the 11th Marines?
I got there in February of '99.
Okay.
So I enlisted in '95. Went boot camp in the fall of '95, OCS fall of '97, and after TBS and OBC, I finally hit the fleet, 1st Battalion, 11th Marines in February '99.
Okay. Mark's joining us from a remote location, parts unknown. So, but appreciate Mark being able to make time in his busy schedule to join us. Tell us your background, Mark.
I came into the Marine Corps out of Houston, Texas, where my family's from, in 2000. I was contract Marine. They were really looking for folks with computer experience at the time. I had that, signed up under a 5-year contract. So I went to boot camp, and then for all us comm folks, that means McCagsey out at 29 Palms, glorious 29 Palms, where I took a 6-month school out there. Luckily, it was in the winter time, and arrived to division, or straight to division. So straight out to the fleet division in Las Pulgas with the 11th Marines in the spring of 2001. So it was, I was given, because I had an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's, and we'll talk about a lot of the questions. Why did you go OCS? Because I wanted to be enlisted. I wanted to have the enlisted experience of the Marines. And so needless to say, I got Lance pretty quickly, then corporal, and I was a corporal when stuff that we're about to talk about happened. So I was connected to CEM, Consolidated Electronic Maintenance, with Regiment. So down there in Pulgus, I was with Regimental CEM, right next door to the comm folks.
So CEM, for those who may not be familiar with it, you're one of the guys that basically fixed radios, comm gear. Is that correct?
That's right. Well, to be certain, and I'll go ahead and make this distinction because of the Marines that fight hard. My wire dogs are the folks that lay out your wire from your arrayed antennas into the stuff that I maintain, which is the comm gear. And, we won't give anything away, but without the wire dogs that are right next door, fixing the radios and the stuff for you officers to talk on, we're sort of a very close relationship between radio and comm. So comm and radio go hand in hand. So I was with CEM, Consolidated Electronic Maintenance, basically computers, and we worked very close with comm. So.
Okay, well, I think it's probably evident for everyone, probably even those watching, to say that our world's changed dramatically on September 11th, 2001. So Casey, why don't you tell us a little bit, where were you on 2001 and what were your initial reactions?
Yeah, so I was, so the regiment at the time, so Colonel Saylor was the regimental CO, Steve Hogue was the XO. And I was actually just beginning my B billet, and I did a supplementary MOS program, and they made me an adjutant, and so I got to stay. I got to stay in the division, and they knew that I was gonna. They knew I was gonna stay. There's that, since I was already an artillery safety certified artillery officer, they were like, you know what? Let's make Casey the regimental adjutant. We got to build it up here. So I had just come out of ADJ school, the ADJ course. We went right into we're in 29 pounds for the regimental fire X, and then I was going to complete my turnover with the adjutant. So the day before September 10th, me and Sam Sladen, and we headed back to Pulgus to continue our turnover, and the regiment was finishing up their fire X. So. I was just, so the morning of September 11th, I was living there in our quarters there at the north end of Camp Pendleton, and about 06 in the morning, we're just getting ready. I was watching CNN in the morning, headline news, and my wife and I were getting ready for work, and we're watching the TV, and they're like, "Well, we're going to cut away right now. It looks like a small plane had flown into the World Trade Center accidentally," and they cut to it. It's 9 o'clock or so in the morning, and I'm like, "Honey, you got to see this! Like some idiot accidentally flew a plane in there." And then so she's checking it out, and then all of a sudden, the second one buried itself into the second plane flew into the other tower, and we're like, well, that looks pretty much on that looked pretty intentional to us. So we I jammed into work. I called Colonel Saylor on his cell phone out in the field, let him know what had happened, and he's like, okay, thanks for the update. And by that time the base was kind of locking down. We were in place, and then the second one, or the third, one of the birds went into the Pentagon. I updated the Colonel Saylor there, and it was kind of a long day. Like I said, the base locked down, and we're trying to assess like what we're going to do. The regiment was going to complete its training out in the field. I'm sure Colonel Saylor was probably going to talk with then General Conway, the division commander. But that's how that morning went. Like I said, I was trying to do the turnover. The regiment was out in the field doing its live fire exercise out there. but that was September 11th for us.
So Casey, when you
That
called
morning.
Colonel Saylor, when you called Ben Saylor, was that the first he had heard of it, or had he already heard the news?
I think it was trickling in there. I think I suspect I was. I think I was. I mean, when I got a hold of him, I was like, "Hey, sir, you know, I think it was." He's like, he said he thanked me, and then I think he had some other phone calls and stuff like that. We're waiting to see, like, hey, is the regiment going to come out? Are they going to stay out there and train? And they ultimately, like, and I'm sure he was probably talking with the division commander, but you got a whole regiment out there that's firing and doing good things out there. Yeah. So they completed 11th Marine stayed in the field. They completed the artillery, the Fire X.
So Mark, you were one of those guys out in the field. How'd you hear about it, and what were the first thoughts that you and your fellow Marines had when you heard the news?
So I'll go ahead and at the time I was a Lance, so connected to CEM. CEM has got the unique responsibility of making sure that the communications between the base back at Pendleton as well as the base in McCagsey is communicating with the units that are out there, bear mat, long rifle, all that. We make sure that everyone is talking to everybody, and in the field, of course, as you know, there's the nets that we maintain computer wise. So along with that comes television. So some of our senior staff is able to enjoy when they're out there hooking and jabbing later in the evening after operations have retired, some satellite television, which is not usually watched in the morning during operations, but folks like me, the lower enlisted, spend our days and our times usually during a Fire X, going on shift, monitoring the equipment, and coming off of shift. When we're off of shift, we typically, we at the time there wasn't, believe it or not, and I know this is dating myself, but there was only CD players, CDs, no iPhones or anything like that, no iPods. I think there was a basic iPod, but I that was too rich for my my enlisted pay or for me to get. So I was under a 7-ton and meaning it was the waning September. It was the waning days of summer then in the September when we were out on that Fire X. And so I was underneath a 7-ton reading a Maxim, which was a popular magazine at the time, and chewing on sunflower seeds and just kind of minding my own business. And I've written about this extensively. All of a sudden, I heard the loudest silence that I've ever heard out in the McCagsey training area. And by that, I mean, overhead, usually there is aircraft that are posturing to come down from the east. They're getting ready and aligned by air traffic control to not only stay above the military operations area, but also, come into Orange County, Long Beach, LA. They're always up there making noise. The Cobras are always out blasting on stuff. The small arms ranges that everyone's getting qualified on are always going. The grunts are out there firing away, and of course the gun lines every once in a while will pop off a few rounds for, because that's what we do out there. None of that was happening in that moment. It was so quiet that it started to get the junior enlisted's attention, like, why is it so quiet out here? So we started to inquire with our sergeants, and the sergeants wouldn't answer us at first, but then sort of said, hey, we're all going to get together in this essentially command tent, and we did, because we're with regiment, so we were with command then. Ben Saylor, everyone was there, and we went in to this tent, and up on the screen was the news playing as it happened. And so in that moment, we saw the Pentagon. We actually, by that time, everyone had gathered by the time the Pentagon plane had hit. And so I can tell you that everyone's jaw was on the deck, and nobody could believe it. But the general consensus was that our lives, as with everyone in the United States and across the planet, were changing in that moment. And as Division Marines, we knew that we were destined probably to have a hand in changing things. But in that moment, it was very, very profound and very, very quiet. Nobody really had anything to say for a long, long time. So that's what that was like for the 11th Marines as we were out there in real time.
Was there a feel, Mark, that, hey, we're on the road to war now? I mean, this is,
Yeah.
we expect that at some point you're going to deploy?
Yes. I think that in my naivete of junior enlisted, I think that everyone, I mean, to be honest, sir, a lot of folks joined up after this attack. Those of us who joined up before the attack, myself included, I had already had a undergrad degree, and I was shooting for a graduate degree. And I hoped that Uncle Sam could help me pay for it, which eventually happened. So I want to say that I joined for, because I wanted to do my patriotic duty, but I was really just shooting for my master's. And I knew then that dream of, getting my graduate degree was going to have to be on hold. And I know that my esteemed colleague, Major Harsh, excuse me, apologize. I know that my esteemed colleague, Major Harsh, said that the division finished its fires out there, and I believe that is true. But everyone sort of began packing up, and we'll have to check the math. I believe we did come home early. I know that a lot of us were hot to visit the phones back at the base camp there at McCagsey to call our family members and explain that, we're okay, but as far as long-term plans, things are going to be different. So yes, there was a feel that, our plans, our futures that we may have joined for thinking before that moment, we're now going to be on hold because we definitely were going to respond. And being Division Marines, we knew that we would be close to the fight. So.
Yeah, I think as Mark pointed out, it's important to remember that in 2001, cell phones weren't ubiquitous like they are today. And certainly smartphones really didn't exist. And at 29 Palms, the cell phone coverage, even if you had one, was spotty at best. When you spent time in the field, you learned where in the training areas you might be able to climb up on top of a certain rock or outcropping and actually grab a signal. So much different than pretty much the instantaneous communications that we're used to today. I was in Quantico, Virginia. I was the deputy director of the Marine Corps Air Ground Task Force Training Program, MSTP. And at the time, we were doing some instruction that morning for the faculty of the Marine Corps Command and Staff college as they were getting ready to welcome their new class. We were doing some work on talking about the Marine Corps planning process. And so we were providing that instruction, and someone came in and whispered that an airplane had crashed into the World Trade Center. And just like Casey, my initial thoughts were, oh, it's some Cessna or some small plane. And, okay, that's bad, but, planes have crashed into buildings before. World War II, you had a B-17 crash into the Empire State Building. And at the break, I walked out and walked down the hallway with retired Lieutenant General Knudsen, who was one of the senior mentors for MSTP. And we stuck our heads into one of the conference rooms there at Command and Staff College, and they all had TVs in them. And so we looked up and we saw the smoking, flames coming out of the first tower. And we watched live as the second plane crashed in, just like many people watched live and saw that second plane crash in. And it became obvious that, things were, this was a planned attack. It was not, something random. And then, of course, that was followed up by the attack at the Pentagon later that morning, a few hours later. So, our training took on a whole different level of seriousness at that point. But certainly, I think we can all probably agree that on September 11th, there was a lot of questions on who is this attacking our country, and where'd they come from, and what's our response going to be? And I don't think any of us would have thought that morning, and correct me if I'm wrong, that, ultimately we would end up in Baghdad as a result of the events of that morning. So let's talk about what happened. Mark, you talked about, and Casey, things kind of ramped up in the division. I wasn't in the division yet. I still, had about 9 months left in Quantico before I came out and joined the regiment. So what types of things were going on in the regiment as you got back from Des Fire-X? And, if you will, the smoke started to clear. We sent troops into Afghanistan, and things started rationing up. What was going on back there, Casey?
So, so the original target was the 15th MEU was deployed at the time, and they married up with the East Coast MEU, and the original target was, Bin Laden and what was his organization?
Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda. Yeah, they claimed responsibility. Thanks. They claimed responsibility in the Taliban. They claimed responsibility. So the focus early on was Afghanistan, the Kandahar operation, Bravo Battery, Bravo 111, and under Joe Russo, they were the ones that were on the MEU with 15th MEU. 1-1, I think it was the BLT. And so they responded to that. And we were sourcing there was a lot of taskers that had come down looking for Afghan or Persian speakers. And so we sourced a couple. And so we're kind of going there. And then, but again, it was Afghanistan, but Afghanistan fell pretty quickly, as I remember. But then we started, it started moving, and we're in 2002, as things were kind of maturing. We started looking at things were kind of moving away from Afghanistan, kind of vectoring towards Iraq. The administration was kind of moving towards that direction. Some of the things that we're looking at, I think in the spring, maybe in the spring of 2002, maybe earlier. I remember Steve Hogue kind of grabbed the XOs and some of the staff, and we're like, okay, we may be deploying potentially, and there was kind of like those feelers kind of going out there, and we're thinking. We started thinking about like what would it take? And we deployed batteries pretty efficiently. What would it take? The thought was like, what would it take to deploy a battalion or the regiment if the division was to go that way? And so we were kind of looking at what would we leave behind? What would we take? How would we ship it out and stuff like this? So Steve was kind of moving on the XO, the Regiment XO was kind of leading the, hey, what's it going to look like to move an entire regiment and deploy it? Is it all going to go on black bomb ship, or is it going to go on gray on shipping? Is it going to be a hybrid of aviation taking us over? What is the MPF shipping? What would that provide us, and things like that. So that was kind of moving towards, and then the continuing on with like regimental exercises, the Steel Knights, the Desert Scimitars. We're kind of moving and doing division level exercises as it kind of grew throughout early 2002 in the spring and the summer when you came along, Colonel Marletto.
So Mark, you had that kind of initial feel among you and the troops that, we might be going somewhere. I think you probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe everyone was a little geared up, and then you got back and it was perhaps, hey, not so fast. Things we're not going directly somewhere. But what was the kind of thought as you started participating in some of this training, and was there a feel that ultimately we're going to do something?
Sure. We got back, and the feel, at least on my side, on the enlisted side, was basically what the quote was: what we got, what we ain't got. And everything was counted and then counted again as far as what we had. And at that time we were transitioning into digitals, for those history buffs around, and the leather boots. So no more shining of the boots, and no more tricolors. It was digis all the way. This is what we're going to use. And that was for the green on green stuff. And then we started getting issued the desert ones. And when the desert ones came out, there was a regular pattern, and then there was a digit pattern. Basically, we knew that when those were issued to us, that was sort of an eyebrow raiser, like, that this means that we're going, even though we haven't gotten the word, we're going. And some of the counting, I don't know whether logistics was involved in this, Major Harsh or so, other folks were trying to get a feel for, the Humvees. How many Humvees do we have? How many 5 tons do we have? We started getting some funding, but we were very aware that we had cloth doors on our Humvees. Some folks were a little bit alarmed at that, but we got these nice, brand new, fantastic 7 tons. So that was another sort of indicator that, they're starting to spend money on this. We should probably get our affairs in order. So that was, basically there was accountability of a lot of stuff. And then the trips. Major Harsh talks about the trips. Steel Knight, I'm not sure if I was a part of that, but I definitely was involved in Desert Scimitar, and that was mind-blowing, because we took this trip and basically ran down to the Colorado, popped down by there, and camped out in a nice farmer's field, so where we could stage a pause and set up things and practice and talk to everybody. And then we crossed, and that was really something. That was my first time going across water on anything. I was in a Humvee, and for those of you who out there who have never done an operation where you cross a river, think of how amazing it is to you, and then think of those folks perhaps in another country that have never seen such a thing. Like, how can this group of people cross this river? It's mind blowing. And I have my mind blown, and I was American. So that, combined with all of the accountability stuff and issuing of new gear, was the thought that, yes, we're ramping up to do something here. And I'm not sure when the word did come down, but the word did eventually come down, and it was really not a surprise to anybody.
Yeah,
So
well,
Mark
I would
talks about-
caveat off that, like you had said, that in 2002, division level exercises they became much more robust in 2002, and the river crossing, I think we're starting to orient on Iraq, and so the Tigers we were speculating, and like, because there was I remember Gary Smythe was like, okay, well, we're going to plan a series of fires to support the division crossing a river. And we're like,
So
what is
great.
that? We're like, well, no, what's a big river that's like the Tigers and the Euphrates and stuff like that. Maybe that was, the rumblings were in there, and yeah, I'd say that, yeah, that late spring it started feeling like something's going to move. And I remember Colonel Saylor said very matter of factly, he goes, and I think he was kind of dismayed, he's bummed. He's like, it's not a question of if, it's when. And I think he wished we would have gotten the deployment sooner so we could take the regiment into combat. I mean, but he knew the timing wasn't going to happen, but the regiment was in good hands. But,
So
Yeah.
just for those who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, Desert Scimitar, and I was not there, but certainly was aware it was going on, was a large exercise where the division basically moved across Southern California, to the Colorado River. And when we talk about a river crossing, the division put in a pontoon bridge across the Colorado River and crossed on a pontoon bridge. So constructed its own bridge, for those of you who aren't familiar with what we're talking about. And as subsequently when we got into planning for Iraq, as Casey mentioned, you had not only the Tigris and Euphrates River, but numerous other small water obstacles that potentially would have to be crossed. And there were some speculating that, if we went into Iraq, it was going to be called the Battle of the Bridges, because there were so many water obstacles to cross in order to, if we attacked from Kuwait all the way up to, Baghdad. Obviously, we're going into what's known as the Fertile Crescent, and it's known as the Fertile Crescent because there's lots of water there. So yeah, okay, let's talk about, what happened then as we started to get a little closer. As we mentioned early on, I took command in June of 2002, and I went back and looked at our command chronology from July to December, and it really kind of shocked me on how much we packed into that short time. So just to highlight a couple things, in July, soon after I took over, we had a regimental fire-ex at Camp Pendleton. We rolled into a series of division command post exercises in August. In September, we rolled out to 29 Palms for 11th Marines fire-ex, followed on the end by a division exercise. We came back to Camp Pendleton, immediately rolled into a very large 1st Marine Expeditionary Force simulation, MEFEX. We started working on, we knew that the Iraqi artillery was going to be something that we were going to have to deal with. So we worked on putting together a counterfire battle drill that used artillery, that used aviation, that tied it all together with our digital communications. So we did some command post exercises to test that. We did a live fire test of that with the 5th Battalion, 11th Marines in November. 3rd Battalion, 11th Marines did back-to-back combined arms exercises in October and November at 29 Palms. There was a steel night exercise in December, 29 Palms, that 311 participated in. We did a live fire, counter fire exercise at Camp Pendleton with 111, 211, 311, and 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing to refine our procedures in December. And then, oh, by the way, we still had all of those little things going on that we normally did in peacetime. Support to schools for tactical air control party shoots, support to testing for the 120 millimeter mortar, support for new digital fire control devices, just on and on and on. When you look at it, you say, wow, we probably didn't even, thinking back on it, we didn't even have time to grab a breath during that time frame. And I also recall that General Mattis had told me, don't worry about your ammunition allocation, shoot as much as you need in order to train the regiment and get it ready to go. And once again, I went back and looked at the command chronology, and for that 6-month period, we shot over 17,000 155 rounds, and that was just out of our allocation. So when we had exercises like combined arms exercises, 311 shot a couple thousand rounds on those exercises. Those did not come out of our allocation, similar to all that school support that we did. So the bottom line is we put a lot of rounds downrange, gearing up during that time frame. So Casey, anything that stuck out in your mind about as things were kind of ramping up and gaining intensity?
So I remember how you focused on, remember how you and Dave Thomas were doing we're working on the counter fire, the counter battery with the radars, and you, I forgot what, but they're trying to redo this. I forget what they say, and I'm not very wise when it comes to radars, but you and Dave had figured out how to adjust the safety measure, the safety protocols, so that, I mean, you're from the time that I pick up the counterfire hit, I mean, you were getting response, you're getting rounds down range for counter battery fire in what, 30 seconds or 45 seconds. It was
42. I think 42 seconds was the kind of the record we set there in December. From
that was like a week's worth of work that you guys were working out there, because you had the fire batteries out there to try and finagle the Q46s to the VCS and getting it down to streamline the reaction, to reduce the reaction time. I remember that distinctly, as I think you get really good success in really responsive fires, and respond if Iraq's, I guess, their center of gravity were to actually fire upon us.
Mark,
I do remember that.
Yeah, how about
you guys spent some cycles nugging that down.
Mark, anything stick out from you from that training period?
Yeah, for us enlisted folks, we just never unpacked our packs. Basically, we were told that because of the situation that we needed to have, actually the warrant officer, can't remember, it was Hounshaw, gave us a list of stuff and basically said, you guys need to get like 2 of these, maybe 3, and just have them in a pack and just stand by with them. Like, this is going to be your pack for possible deployment. And then there was the other pack of, this is what you need for these exercises we go on, because there's going to be one after the other, after the other, after the other. Like, those of you who are, here's the list for COM, here's the list for CEM, and we will be supporting all of these exercises. So you have this, essentially your deployment pack, it was mandated that every Marine get the items on this list, and then also have a pack for the exercises that were going on. So it was made very clear to us roughly in the summer that with the new command, with you coming on, sir, that we were serious about being mission ready, and that we should have these things ready to go, because that's our job. And if you don't like it, you can pound sand. So that's what we did. So we got ready and we got up to speed.
So, obviously we're doing a lot of training, but also there were a lot of personal preparations that we were undergoing, not only personal readiness as far as making sure that people were medically ready, dental readiness was up, but I think we all had to, kind of adjust and get our personal mindset. So Casey, what were you thinking at the time? And you had a, brand new baby in the house, and what kinds of things were you talking to Stephanie about as kind of things were ramping up?
Yeah. So Bennett, our son was born in June as our first child, and so I guess we're moving down into the fall and December. So my I guess my biggest concern was, how long was this going to take? Was this going to be a world where we're going to be mired in war, for 10 years? Well, we were, but how long was the deployment going to be? Is this going to, are we going to deploy like to Guadalcanal? We won't get furlough. There's Bennett in the background there. You can kind of see him. That was he was 5 months older. 8 months old when we deployed, but that's he's now 19. But that little guy was a little iffy. So yeah, I was gonna miss him. I gotta tell you, and so for Colonel Marletto, you're packing it. You went out pretty soon, right after the new year. I think is when you deployed. We got the deployment orders, I think December 31st, and I think it was New Year's or thereabouts. When the actual op board was signed, where the deployment orders were going down there, you went out, and I remember we were getting you kind of ready, because I'm like, I really I kind of want to see this guy. I don't want anything, I don't want to buy, I want to take one for the team. I'm going to do the best I can to avoid that and do my duty the best of my ability. But I really did want to come back and raise a family. And was wondering just how long the deployment would be. And I don't know if you remember this, Colonel, but I think you're ahead now. I think you were locking down, or you're going to leave the next day or something like that. But and I was kind of like, I think I'd ask you. I'm like, I was like, hey sir, how's this thing going to go down? And because I had some, I had some concerns, and I guess I'm mortal, and I'd ask you, what's going to happen here? You're like, Case, we're going to kick the shit out of him. I'm like, and after that, you said that with a whole lot of confidence. I'm like, oh well, we got this. And I had no fear after that. I had no hesitation. You went out, and I followed back up. I know you were out there. I made sure I got you a big fat cigar and brought that back over to you. Remember that big Churchill looking son of a bitch? But yeah, I got to tell you, when you get when I had my regimental commander and say, Case looked at me, and we're gonna kick the hell out. And I was good after that. I'm like, I'm ready to go to work. I'm ready to do this. So.
We had a Marine Corps birthday ball, of course, during that time frame, among other things, and the guest speaker was General Zinni for the officers' ball, and General Mattis had a kind of a commander's call with General Zinni, and General Zinni, of course, had been the commander of U.S. Central Command, so was very familiar with the region. And General Zinni kind of said, if you guys do deploy, if you don't kick the shit out of these guys, you just need to quit right now, because it's going to be such a overmatch. And so, I was confident that we were going to do well. Obviously, I was concerned that wanted to bring everyone home. I wanted to have as few casualties as possible, but there was no doubt in my mind that ultimately, if we deployed, we were going to win, and we were going to win big. But by the same token, didn't want to get too overconfident. But certainly in private, as I mentioned to Casey, I was confident that we were going to get the job done. Mark, on the anything on the enlisted side that you recall as things were kind of rolling down as far as personal preparations between you, your friends, reaching back to your families? Anything stick out for you?
Sure. There's, I was dating a young lady who ended up being my first wife. Some of the folks on the enlisted side, I don't know how to put this, sir, in a way that maintains my honor as a Marine. Got married before January. There, right in that time frame, I was one of those Marines that got married at the time, and there was not a rush. I think they needed to. A lot of us felt like we needed to be married so that the person who we our spouses could take care of those things at home that needed to be taken care of with the with the I guess command and control of power of attorney. Being married helped them being able to execute those things. Not as the rumor has it for the combat pay and the additional danger zone pay that was I think a lot of the enlisted or a lot of Marines get a bad rap on that side, thinking that we got married just before we deployed just for the money, and that's not at least for this Marine why we did it. A lot of us did it because we loved our significant others, and we needed somebody who could take care of our stuff back home if in the event of our untimely demise. So there was sort of a hasty for me anyway. I should have. I wish that I would have been afforded more time to get to know my first wife, but the sort of the environment and the feeling at that time, at least in December, in January, was that, hey, we're going to go probably pretty soon. I can't remember what time we were told that for me, we were already sending Black Bottom over, and I was part of that, rolling down to San Diego with a lot of our equipment to put them on boats. So that was sort of a heightened level of dissonance, that the equipment was going, and no doubt we would be following shortly. So a lot of us got married. A lot of us, there was a push to get things to get taken care of before we left. So of course our list of things that we needed to go in our sea bags was on, and it was sort of a push to get everything ready to deploy. So that's kind of the feeling and the tone and the tenor of what was happening, at least on my side, on the enlisted side, in those final weeks of 2002.
We're coming up on, we're at really the 19-year mark, coming up on the 20-year anniversary of the OIF 1. Casey, you deployed to Iraq, I think, twice more after that. As you look back on that initial deployment, anything that you look at that in hindsight you wish you would have done differently the first time out that maybe you applied when you went back for your second and third trip to Iraq?
Yeah, I wish I would have gotten a digital camera. I just took like one of those old. I would have taken more photos and captured to capture the sights because I only took like 2 little disposable cameras. I wish I would have done that. Now I kind of had a minimalist. I tried to take a kind of a conservative approach. I didn't know that we had a lot of assets at our disposal. I think we brought everything. I guess maybe the technology is really. We started doing those Fire Sticks, and that was pretty easy. But Knots, it was. I thought we were pretty. I got to tell you, I preferred that deployment better. I enjoyed that deployment much more than I did my subsequent deployments there on the mid team in 0506 when we were out there. I was well used to be out there, and then the final one. That was a good deployment. But I would like to. I think I would have liked to have captured more images. There's a lot of work. I think I would like to have actually. I remember I was so I was artillery, and I was telling you I was on my B billet, and I gotta tell you I was mercilessly ragged for being an adjutant. It's not one of the most desirable MOSs. So a lot of my peers were off. They were on traditional B billets. They were either at the warfighting lab or down at the depot, or somewhere in the supporting establishment. They're like, "Oh, you're going to be an edge, whatever." I came back. They're like, "Oh man, they were sitting on the sidelines when I got to see the big show." And that was one of the best decisions I ever made. Learned a ton, learned how to write, and work on a regimental staff. But that was, but I got to tell you, that was a good deployment. I definitely, I prefer that deployment better than my subsequent ones. So things changed a little bit there. That 0506 was an interesting period of time. I think the issue was kind of in doubt there, but the awakening happened 07, 08, some long times. But yeah, in all, 27 months in that country, spread across 3 deployments. I should have bought a house out there. They kept sending me back.
I think just to mention, yes, there were lots of pictures captured. Wish we would have captured more. There were some folks that captured some great video. Sergeant Major Racine from 511. Mark captured some great video, so great to capture the historical record. One thing that I kind of ask folks is there are literally thousands of pictures out there, and a lot of people have their personal photos that they did take. And I would urge everyone to, if you've got pictures, sit down and go through those pictures and try and remember, not only when it was taken, but who's in those pictures. Because we've got lots of pictures, but we don't have a lot of things recording actually who's in the photos. So record those for prosperity, and those will survive long after all of us are gone. Mark, anything? Hey, let me ask you, Mark. I'll shift gears here. What prompted you to be smart enough to take a video camera?
Well, sir, I can tell you that at the time, the general feel for that initial deployment, sir, we didn't know really what to expect. And I think just to the same token, the Iraqis didn't know what to expect, as well as the enemy, the now free Iraqis. Nobody knew what was coming at them. And I think that was evident in your speech when you said they're about to have a close encounter of the third kind, because you might as well have when you're stepping down out of that 7-ton, it's just like you're stepping off of a spaceship. They've never seen somebody or something like you in your MOT gear and your masks and your MVGs and your weaponry and stuff like that. So by the same token, sir, I mean, this was before Congress had enacted, some of the funding that we needed to up armor. So you and I were going in with, some cloth doors and stuff of that nature. I think, the insurgency, the folks that did stand and fight were not, they didn't know what to expect. I mean, Casey talks about Major Harsh talks about later deployments being difficult, and that's because they knew what was coming at them by that time. But this first one, we didn't know. And as such, really, cameras and video equipment was not on the list of things to take. Also, at least from the junior enlisted, was not expected from us. In other words, wasn't fully supported in terms of our higher enlisteds. It's not on your packing list. Why do you have it? Why do you have a camera? It's not like we were shaken down like, hey, what are you taking pictures of? There wasn't a deep suspicion like that. It was just that, hey, this is not part of the mission. The mission is to get down, get the comm lines up, get the LOC set up, get the COC set up, and cameras are not part of that. So some of us, however, sir, did have the presence of mind, in spite of all of that, to bring cameras, to bring video equipment. I'm glad that I did. I wasn't, there was no standing order saying that we couldn't take pictures. It's just that, it wasn't part of the mission. The mission was, as I said, to get down, get up and get comm established so that you could talk to Casey, you could talk to the LOC, and you could talk to the rear. That's why that video of you, sir, when we went out to deploy, was filmed from a lower angle, was because I didn't want to be detected from my my sergeants that I was recording you. For a junior enlisted to sit there, if I had raised the camera where it was like over my shoulder, I mean, a lot of my senior staff was like, hey, devil, what the hell? How about you sit there and listen to what the colonel is saying to you instead of, blatantly filming him. So that's why that point of view is down, pointed up towards you, sir, was because I had to do it in sort of a covert way because I wasn't sure what to expect. as was the general feeling of nobody knew what to expect. So, hey, is this camera okay? I didn't know. But in spite of me not knowing if I was going to get my ass jumped, which never did happen, whatever reason, I decided that I was going to just distinguish myself with pride and motivation. If I was going to be wrong, I was going to be wrong in a big way. And I'm glad that I did, because that speech was incredible that you gave to us. And it was incredibly motivating, as Major Harsh said earlier. Once you said we're going to kick the shit out of them, I mean, once you gave us that motivation in that speech, once we were arrayed and General, you made sure that General Mattis's message to all hands got to all of us along the gun lines, both at the LOC and with regiment and at the battalion level. I mean, that motivating speech that you gave us when we went out to array, and also General Mattis's words. Those are things that were extremely motivating for the division, the gun lines, and all of us. And I'm super glad that I did, and I hope that those folks who have seen your message as we went out there and can realize the motivating the motivating factor in it. And if you do have video, please submit it. because it goes so far in for prosperity, as well as for those Marines looking in for the future as we make this video here, and also hopefully those folks who might have video, please sit down and look at it. And if you think it's worthwhile, please submit it to the 11th Marines. We'd love to have it.
Yeah, we've captured some video off YouTube that was shot by a member from Marine from 311. That's some great work that he's done. Again, the video work that Sergeant Major Racine did, and also Mark. And again, if there are others out there, send it our way. Those videos, most of them have been posted on our Facebook page, 11th Marines OIF 1 20-year reunion Facebook page. You can also find them on our website, 11th Marines OIF1.com. So if you want to see those are out there for you to view for your viewing pleasure. I wanted to thank you both for taking the time tonight, talking about the road to war, between September 11th, 2001 to 31 December 2002, which is when we got our deployment order and started deploying folks to Kuwait, and eventually led to our operations in Iraq. Future sessions, we'll talk next time we get together. We'll talk about our deployment and assembly there in Kuwait, life at LSA Matilda, the preparation and getting all catching the desert crud, experiences in our first sandstorms, Master Guns Williams getting lost in the sandstorm. So we can talk about some of those things our next session. For those viewers out there, if you want to participate in a future session, we'd love to have you. We'd love to get more views from down in the the trenches on what you saw in OIF. So I hope that this sparks some interest for others to want to get involved and share their experiences. And so thanks again for joining us on this session, and we look forward to our future sessions.